Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, living beneficiaries, to the show for living beneficiaries, the House of Hidalgo show on the Estate Radio Network. Prepare for the most educational 60 minutes on Olive Radio with your host, Rick Hidalgo. The House of Hidalgo show can be followed on Twitter and Facebook by searching House of Hidalgo. Find the show on the web at www.therockofsalem.org. Sign up for the newsletter, and while you're there, take the 5-question survey to let us know what you think. The Estate Radio Network is part of the Blog Talk Radio family of networks and can be found at www.blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. Join the show now by chat or call 619-639-4605. Don't forget to dial 1 to get in the queue. Here's your host, Rick Hidalgo! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rick Hidalgo. This, of course, is the House of Hidalgo show with your host, Rick Hidalgo. And
technical difficulties here. If we could have Dr. Reisman maybe explain to your audience how she got started in all of this all that time ago. How did you go from writing songs for Captain Kangaroo to chasing demons across America and speaking to government?
Exactly, Dr. Reisman. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of a switch. And it isn't a switch, actually. When I started working on the whole issue of child sexual abuse, which is what we're really talking about, through pornography, through sex education, through Kinsey, through manipulation of our laws and everything else. It's really the same thing. I was just writing songs for kids before, and then shifted over to, golly gosh, what's everybody doing to kids now? So I couldn't do the nice stuff. I had to start dealing with the nasty stuff. It's kind of that simple.
And to me, it seems like the average person doesn't understand when somebody says, all this sex education might not be such a good thing for our country. They look at you like, oh, you're crazy. How could you say such a thing?
Right.
When one really does the research and you get down to who is running the sex education of America, and why do we have 1 in 5 teenagers that wants to be a teen mother, and why do we have 1 in 6 teenagers with an STD? I mean, it's just gone up and up and up. And if they're so educated, it just comes down to it's a bad seed from the start, isn't it, Dr. Reisman?
Yeah, it's not only a bad seed, but it's absolutely designed to destroy the children and to destroy the society. There's no question about it, and it's been stated over and over again in various ways. Yeah, we have the kids themselves answering that even more than media. Sex education has taught them about sex. So, Mr. and Mrs. America, just take a look, what has sex education taught them about sex? It's all been an experiment conducted on children. It fulfills all of the requirements of a definition of experiment. There's never any informed consent by these children. Their brains are not designed in any way, shape, or form to process the sexual stimuli they're getting. And those who are doing it know that very well. We have 2 kinds of people doing it to our kids. We have either the total ignoramuses, which is, that always happens. Or we have people who are deliberately sexualizing themselves for their own pleasure and delight. That's called grooming. It's illegal, and it probably is, frankly, the most vicious attack on human beings ever in the history of society.
Yeah, when you say that, my mind flashes to the picture. It's from the 1950s of Kinsey, and he's in a schoolroom full of children, and he's showing them, I think it's porcupines populating on a little slide screen.
Right.
You see the looks on the children's faces. They're so, confused and why are we doing this at school? I'm uncomfortable. This is obviously a life thing that my parents should be here. And you could just see the demon on his face, really. The sunken in eyes, the look he was enjoying, taking way down from those children right there in that moment. And I have looked for that picture on Google Images by itself. I can't find it anywhere besides your documentary, The Kinsey Syndrome, Dr. Reisler, which is just
but it's very strange. But it's very strange because that picture appeared in both of the biographies on Kinsey. They're very positive, wonderful biographies. They really think Kinsey's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And the authors, they themselves put that picture in their books, and you look at the picture, and it's
they're proud of it. They're so proud of it.
Yeah, they are.
Oh.
They absolutely are. They're torturing these children. There's no question. I did a blow-up of the pictures myself and did close-ups of the children's faces. These kids are being traumatized, and the people who are watching, which would be Kinsey himself and his wife, both of them giggling and laughing. She doesn't look as satanic as he does, but she looks like a vicious human being. It's very hard for people to recognize the fact that, just like Nazi Germany, just like Hitler, just like Stalin had all their scientists standing in lockstep and doing horrible things, we have ours, and Kinsey would be the head honcho for all that.
Well, in fact, they got a lot of their ideas from us. Isn't that it? With that, what was that Nazi's name? Von Baluseck. In his court trials, the judge said to him, I got the impression you were doing this to impress Kinsey. And he said, Kinsey asked me for my papers. And the things that he did. Could you talk about what Von Baluseck did to the children that he was in control of just for a moment, Dr. Reisler, so people understand, like, the kind of evil we're talking about? If you don't know about Alfred C. Kinsey, you've got to get these books. You've got to see this documentary, because to understand why there's a pervert on every corner now almost, you've got to understand the K-bomb. Go ahead, Dr. Reisler.
Yeah, I would say that's true, Rena. You just to understand why there's a pervert on every corner is quite right, and often in your own homes. This didn't just happen all on itself. We certainly did not have these kinds of problems. You always had pervs, you always had nutcases. But we didn't breed them when I was young. We didn't have them around the corner everywhere you look. No, we are cultivating and we are breeding them.
Dr. Rice?
Yeah.
You covered in one of your talks about Playboy, how it came out the same year that the K-bomb did with Kinsey's normal sexuality in the human male, and how Hugh Hefner was really inspired by Kinsey, and they kind of backed each other up. You had Kinsey, which was taking the academic side of it and saying to, people like the Pope and the Vatican, hey, sexuality is normal in children, and the worst thing about molesting them is the overreaction by their parents. We just need to pull the priest around, And then you had Hefner on the public side of the culture of everything saying, hey, this is okay, that really more men are doing homosexual things than they really are, really more men are involved with prostitutes than they really are, and he had polled prison populations. So you had like a two-pronged attack to create pedophilia, to create these kind of behaviors in America. I want you to talk about the cartoon images that Playboy and Hustler will run that suggest subtly to men that children are sexual beings, for objects, basically.
Oh, my gosh, Rena, you really got this down. This is perfect. Yes, absolutely. Well, the public has to, first of all, understand, they're always so shocked when you tell them. Hugh Hefner himself was a virgin in college. Come on. Most of our guys tend to, we're virgins in college. And the Yale, they talk about the Yale girls, that's the way people were. They were saving themselves for their beloved, that sort of thing. And the thing that outraged me, of course, was, among other things, that this guy, this pervert, this psychopath, Kinsey, who is a criminal sexual psychopath, torturing little children, torturing himself so much that he pretty much died from what he did to his genitals, and that's what he wants everybody else to kind of fall into as well. But Hefner read Kinsey when he was in college, and he said, oh, gosh, everybody's been lying to me. Hefner was saving himself for his fiancée, and he said, doggone it, everybody else is having a good time, and I'm the only one who didn't. And so he said, I will, and those are his words, I will be Kinsey's pamphleteer. I will be his pamphleteer. And he became this pamphleteer. He created a magazine he called Playboy. And so, of course, he was promoting child sexual abuse in Playboy. Actually, since 1953. No, not 53. That was the first issue. He didn't have anything in there. 1954. Since 1954, Hefner started with his little cartoons about boys kind of being there in a sex scene and, implying things, not, so that the consumer, who was still not a pedophile, the consumer wouldn't really catch on, but would sort of feel funny about it, because that's what happens. And indeed, over the 10-year period, the next thing we knew, Hefner started to use little girls in these sex scenes. He didn't use girls at first. And then he used little girls, and then the next thing we knew, we had full color, full page things, images and cartoons, still cartoons of these girls being raped and that sort of thing. Fairy tale cartoons mostly, Dorothy getting raped by the
Gretel, that kind of thing.
Dr. Reisler.
And then moving into photographs later.
Dr. Reisler?
The people, go on. I'm sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, I'm here still. Do you know how many of the Dr. Kinsey's research group went on to form the NAMBLA organization?
Actually,
Men Boy Love.
Yeah, we don't have the statistics or exactly how that where we know that they were using the guys who became NAMBLA. We know that. That's on record. That they were working with them, that those guys were doing a lot of quote-unquote research, if you will, with little kiddies for Kinsey. So you could call him part of his team, really. It's hard to say. He said he had 9 guys on his, quote, team who were sexually assaulting, raping, sodomizing little children. And, of course, I would argue there's no question that he was one of them. And then he had headmasters that he was using that were doing things with their boys. We found all that out over time with the British doing the investigation that they did. And, of course, that von Valuchek, Dr. von Valuchek, who was raping little children and telling them it's going to be the smokestacks for me when he was in charge of his, a Polish village, and these children would go into the concentration camps. Now, this is the most evil experience, the most evil scientist that has ever graced our great nation. And so when we look at where our kids are and where our society is, look back, find out what the history is of how we got here. We did not wake up one morning and become the deplorable degenerates that we are now. It was created, and we have to understand how it was created.
Yes, exactly.
That's why I like that Playboy lead-in, because Stephen, I know you're defending the guys, but like with the idea that there's nothing wrong with a little bit of Playboy. There's nothing. I mean, you hear that so often. If there's nothing wrong with a little bit of porn, because most guys use porn from a kid. I'm not saying anything about you, Stephen. Sorry, not calling you out, buddy. But I'm saying that I want people to know that this isn't something that really is okay. It's a programming technique. And Dr. Reisler has these photographs in her book that are just unreal. Little kids sitting there looking at Playboy, how they're learning about sex, and she says now they're going to go play house. How do you think they're going to go play house? This is how it's being, and it's from the top down published. I mean, he got funding from the Rockefellers to do this to us. I want you to talk about that if you can, Dr. Wilson.
Yeah, well, Kinsey was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation at the same time that they were funding the Nazis over there when we were fighting World War II. So, you can really look at this as a kind of a two-part deal. And so from Kinsey's fraudulent research, the Rockefellers put all that money into creating what was called a model penal code. I urge everybody to read my books because you won't read this. You won't understand your history. Anywhere else, you'll just walk around befuddled all the time, wondering why little kids are constantly being raped and why you're so afraid of letting your child walk out the door. So, so they created what they called a model penal code. The model penal code was completely based upon Kinsey's frauds and crimes against children, sexual torture of a little baby, 2 months of age, sexual torture of infants, at least 317 little children, all of them under age 14, and 2035. It depends on how you try to gather those data. It's not like they were happy to give it to us. And so we're looking at a massive abuse that has become the foundation for all human sexuality education globally, not just in the United States of America. I just came back from Croatia. They killed their sex education curriculum there. Once I, kind of gave them a few lectures. So that was killed. I know the Russians by now have just knocked down all that sex ed for homosexuality. So, if people, and Switzerland has canceled all their sex ed stuff that was coming out of what they call their competency place. And that's because the people who've been in charge of human sexuality education have been largely perverts or ignorant fools who just learned and act out what the perverts tell them.
Absolutely. And then these parents just sign these permission slips for their kid to have sex ed at, younger and younger grades. I mean, and now we look at the news and we see, sixth graders being forced by their teacher to ask each other for lesbian kisses, whether they're homosexual or heterosexual. It shouldn't even be in school at all, in my opinion.
Well, the sex perverts are absolutely in charge. They are in charge of all human sexuality education. I have the research that shows how they're trained. They're trained with pornography. They can't get their degrees or certificates.
Oh, yes, talk about sexologist degrees, Dr. Reisman, how one becomes a sexologist and what they have to do and how they corrupt all the other fields around them with this sexologist licensure or whatever degree or whatever they call it.
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to remember there was no field of human sexuality, no field of human sexual education before Kinsey. Didn't exist, couldn't exist. There wasn't anything. Kinsey comes along. He says, I will now bring you, great Americans, all the information about sex, the things you wouldn't admit that you were doing. Well, of course, there's no reason to admit it because we weren't, but we sure are now. Well, anyway. And so he's going to create this field of human sexuality education. Well, who does it? Who comes to his aid? The people who are part of his system. These are people who believe in multiple partners. They believe in getting married only so that they can be look proper in front of the public, but they're going to have sex with everything that walks by. So they have training that gives them masturbation exercises for these folks. They spend hours, years actually, watching pornography. That's what they do. They get a degree. The more pornography that you watch, the bigger your degree, the higher your degree. So, and this comes out of the Institute of Advanced Study of Sexuality in San Francisco. I have photographs of these guys. These faculty, staff, and students all engaged in pornographic activity. They're engaged in sodomy, group sex, and everything else. They're called orgies, And these are the people who train your children. These are the people who design the sex ed curriculum for your children. So no wonder they penalize a little girl for not wanting to kiss another little girl in front of everybody. They're traumatizing these kids. This is criminal sex activity that takes place in the schoolrooms. The sex education is sex abuse. It fulfills all of the variables that are necessary that define grooming. They desensitize the children and then they introduce them to sexual activity. And I don't question, when you Google sex ed teacher arrested for sex, you're going to start finding all kinds of teachers who've been arrested. Not just sex ed teachers, of course, but we also have a huge number of teachers who've been arrested for sex abuse.
Even female teachers are assaulting young male.
Oh yeah, we got a huge growing number of female teachers being arrested for sex abuse of little girls and little boys. Yeah, come on. We've let these guys train our women and our men for the past 1948, 1953, so 40 years. We've had almost 3 generations trained with Kinsey sex education. No wonder we're nutcases. Wow. Is that reasonably blunt?
While you're speaking, I'm flashing to this, I think it's a Rihanna song where she's singing to Kanye West, I want to be a victim, fill me up with your poison. just victimize me, tie me up, do whatever you want to me. And that's what little girls all across the country are singing because they're listening to Miley Cyrus and Hannah Montana and this Disney, satanic programming, in my opinion, of, just be a little passive, Beauty and the Beast, love him no matter how horrible he is to you, and, he'll be it just goes so deep, and it starts with cartoons. Like you said, Dr. Reisman, they attack the children with the cartoons, and they attack the men. Right. And in the Hustler magazine, Chester the Molester, the guy that ran that series, he was arrested for molesting his daughter. He was getting these cartoons from his real life, and they put it in a mass-produced magazine, and it went out all across the country. And then everywhere, like, yeah, that's okay. I got one in the truck. It's normal, And it's this idea that we have to fight. I think if we want to turn things around, we got to start with the men in this country getting them to say, you know what, we've been tricked. And you talk about how when something comes into the eyes visually, Dr. Reisman, how it goes all the way down the spinal column to create that reality. Could you talk about that for a little while, please?
Well, yeah, the reality of it is that most of our guys are impotent. That's kind of a big reality. That's globally. If you're talking about guys who are watching pornography, and they will become impotent, no question about that. Well, the definition of impotence is without your own power anyway. So if a guy cannot relate and have a relationship with a young woman, let's just assume we're talking about young, healthy people, because we're talking about young, healthy guys who are now impotent. This is coming out of Italy, France, not the Soviet Union, Italy, France, Japan, the United States, United Kingdom. So wherever you've got any real access now to pornography, these guys are so addicted that they can't function anymore. There's a great program, a great internet site I send people to. It's called Your Brain on Porn. And I do urge guys to go there. You read what these guys are saying about how they're trying to get rid of their addiction to pornography. Well, of course, they have to first stop masturbating, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, but, thank you very much, Kinsey, where we are right now. And by the way, in terms of sadomasochism and the torture and all that, well, Kinsey was a sadomasochist. He had to torture himself so badly. That's what he apparently died of. Maybe he didn't have warts on his hands, but he sure did drop dead because of the things he was doing to his genital organs. So,
when he lost his funding from the Rockefellers, he definitely, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, get the idea of the hangman, but he wasn't hung by his neck, okay? And then he jumped off the chair, and then he died of the bronchitis from that. They say he had a heart attack, but what it really was that the Rockefellers pulled their funding when it looked like he was going to get in trouble, when it looked like there was going to be a scandal over these children that were tortured over a 24-hour period of time that was just published in Chapter 5 of his book, and everybody was, it's the best-selling book ever, okay? Except for you, Dr. Reisman, where you're, But they pulled the funding, so he goes downstairs to the basement, he ties a rope around his boys, climbs up on a chair, and jumps off, okay? And then, meanwhile, they have Congressman Hayes closing the investigation in Congress. They bought the penal code, like you said, they created it, and so that it just went away anyway. So there never was the investigation. The Rockefellers just got away scot-free. They got just clean away with this crime. Now Kinsey's the one that gets all the blame, but he's really just a tool for them. He was their sick pervert tool that they used to manipulate the entire country from I Dream of Jeannie, where you can't see the belly button, to, oh my goodness, people were marrying their horses,
Hey, Dr. Reisman?
Well done, Rena. Yes.
Dr. Reisman?
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Do you think most pedophiles are born with homosexual tendencies, or do you think abuse?
No, for crying out loud, we're not born that way. We aren't born murderers for the most part. We aren't born thieves for the most part. Now, some of us may be born with a greater tendency to yield to that sort of thing. We aren't born that way. I'll have to say that with the massive kinds of vaccinations our little tiny newborn babies are getting, with crippling vaccines, that we do have additional physical problems, but there's no indication that we have mental problems. So no, we're not born that way. God didn't do that to us, you know. But we certainly are born being able to be extremely susceptible to what people say around us, and to being manipulated, and to being maneuvered into all sorts of dysfunctions, and that's what's been happening, not just American society, but globally. Kinsey had an impact globally. The Kinsey Institute just recently did a book called that they call Kinsey, the Man Who Changed the World. Kinsey, the Man Who Changed the World. Well, yeah, you know, that's true.
He did.
He is the man who changed the world. And so we see massive rape and massive sexual abuse, just things that this country never saw in its existence. In the midst of the worst of our depressions, of our poverty, we never had this kind of level of abuse. You got to follow the money, of course, but you know, you got to follow. If you're led by a pervert, expect to have perversion in mass.
Didn't he also reportedly get information from Aleister Crowley as far as his pedophilia?
Well, Crowley was dead when he went there, but yeah, it certainly appears that he would have been working with him, or you know, with him as well as another major pedophile, a guy who formed the phrase "sex before 8 or it's too late," Rene Guillon, the Rene Guillon Society. Yeah, Kinsey had a lot of close buddies like that. So this is not someone you really wanted to establish your sexual life based on. You didn't really want to create your laws and your sex education based on this guy, you know, who was buddy-buddy with Aleister Crowley, with a major pedophile who shaped everything in Thailand. No, this is not a good source for us to learn from. We were doing pretty well, and we stuck with the old guys, you know, those old white guys that we call the founding fathers.
And who was a Nazi doctor? Who was a Nazi doctor? His name escapes me now.
Well, you're talking about Fritz von Baluchek, he wasn't a medical doctor, he's a lawyer, but he was running the whole ship over there in one of the big villages in Poland. And yeah, I mean, and then after the war, he was a very famous, very big deal Nazi. So much so that after the war, he still continued to have huge impact. He was with the lawyer for the legislature in Berlin, I think it was, or Munich, I don't remember which. But the Germans really, they got very upset when the British television people came over there trying to find the information about Baluchek. So they shut down a lot of the doors. Still, the Brits got all the public stuff, the articles that were in the paper, and they're in my book, and they're on my website, in case anybody thinks it wasn't true. And this was the most famous sex rapist in all of Germany at the time. And Kinsey was the most famous American at the time, and so none of our newspapers carried a single word about his connection to this Gestapo child rapist. No, we never got to hear about that.
Wow. Yes, I was aware a little bit of the von Baluchek stuff, but it blows my mind how much today we are still affected by, he went from state legislature to state legislature and had all of the laws changed around to really benefit the pedophiles. Most people don't understand, like you said, they're standing around confused. How come as of 1990, most pedophiles haven't spent a day in jail? Oh, they plead out. They get help, so to speak, and we know the 80-90% recidivism rate. But there is no helping them after a certain point, really, that we know about. Yet, and we're not treating the victims. Could you lay out what you think we should do as a society? Like, number one, I guess, stop supporting porn. What would be your steps?
Well, well, we've got a huge problem because our mass media is completely controlled. That's a big problem. When I was sued by Playboy magazine for libel and slander. They sued me in Holland, and I thought that was just great. I picked Holland because it was the center of pedophilia at the time in Europe, and they figured they could pull it off over there. Unfortunately, the documentation is very clear. I sent the judge, a stack of Playboy's images of children. and they were being sexually abused, and there was no question that they were children. And the judge ruled in my favor and said, no, everything Dr. Easton said is completely established. So Playboy magazine lost to me in 1994, 95. And you'd think maybe that New York Times or Washington Post might be interested in that, for their newspaper, but of course, no. They didn't cover that at all. They were hiding everything from the public about what Playboy had been doing to the public, conditioning those poor consumers who thought they were just looking at a girly magazine. No, darling, you were never just looking at a girly magazine. You were being taken for a sucker, and the rest of your life you probably paid for it in one way or another. So anyway, that was old Playboy. And then you got Penthouse, which spun off out of that, and then Hustler, and now we're just overwhelmed, with this garbage. But, yeah, we need a congressional investigation of Kinsey. We still do. We tried it in 1995. We got beaten down. But we still need a congressional investigation of Kinsey. We need to have Playboy and all the rest of those early child pornographers exposed to the public so that the public understands how come their little sisters and brothers have gotten raped. Why do we have the hazing of little boys now in our all across the country where they're sodomizing little boys if the boy wants to get into the athletic, group there and play basketball or football or something. So they're sodomizing our little boys. Where do you think this all comes from, Mr. and Mrs. America? You think it's just better reporting? You think we just had this happening all along? No way, Jose. So either we survive this or we go down.
Dr. Reisler, can you talk about you mentioned Hustler and the Penthouse. Both of those founders had, I'm sorry, maybe not Hustler, but yeah, I'm sorry, it was Hustler and Playboy. Both of those founders had sexual abuse scandals attached to them. Hugh Hefner and
they've all had sexual abuse scandals. And that's just the stuff we know about. And old Penthouse, old Playboy Hefner, in his own book he talks, or not in his own book, but in several biographies, describe, he was fooling around with his daughter's little girlfriends at age 16. What do we think is going on? These guys are using drugs. They are, focused on young all the time. And, of course it's going to be now. And Playboy was identified by Vicky Garcia when we finally had a congressional, it was the Attorney General's Commission. She talked about these girls that go into Playboy mansions and are getting raped and are forced into all sorts of other activities and drugs that were going on. That's the reality of the sexually free world that we're all talking about. That's what we'll end up with, and that's where we're going if we do not do something about these people who are controlling our media, our educational system, and our judiciary, thank you very much, as well as, of course, the legislature. As I repeat,
a lot of the judges are compromised, aren't they, Dr. They look at porn themselves, or they do these things themselves and then rule on cases all day long. In family courts, they decide where your children are going. And if you look at the statistics, Americans, about the rate of children that are killed in CPS custody or molested or, killed in strange ways, like starved to death or decapitated. These are things that you just don't hear about on the media, like you said, because we're not getting the real news, we're not getting the real story, and people at the top and in charge are just, they're community lovers, they're Canadians. That's not the right word. They're Canadians.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And we've got a huge problem with the foster care business and with CPS kidnapping children, really, from decent parents and trying to putting them into situations where these children are being abused. That's the reality. Look, when I was on the Donahue show years ago, that was, 90, I guess, he made a comment. He made several comments. He was very supportive of the Kinsey Institute, Kinsey and all that. And he said, look, he said, Kinsey trained. We've based a whole generation of sexologists on Kinsey, and you're saying essentially that Kinsey was a dirty old man. Well, indeed, we did base at that time a whole generation of sexologists on Kinsey. Now we've got 3 generations of sexologists standing on Kinsey, and they've been training your mothers, your grandmothers, and your grandfathers, and your fathers. So no surprise that our judges, our doctors, our lawyers, our legislators, everybody that we're looking at now has gone through the Kinsey training per se. And so, yes, we do have a huge problem. There's no question about it. But wake up, America, smell the coffee, start fighting the right battles, and, God's with us if we would decide to take the right kind of actions, that's all.
Yeah, that leads me into another question I was going to ask. I was going to bring up Saldana here, but I was going to ask you, have you ever gotten a fair shake from anybody in the mainstream?
Probably the answer to that would be no.
No.
No, it doesn't happen. Not in the mainly. What do they call it? Somebody else. There's some term they use for the mainstream media. The
dinosaur media. Dinosaur media.
Whatever it's called. I forgot. But no. They're bought and sold. You want to stay in business, you don't tell the truth.
That's right.
You want to be in a newspaper and get invited to the parties. You're not going to tell the truth. Same thing with the scientific field. You want to do proper investigations. You want to get proper grants. You're not going to tell the truth. I had a grant from the United States Department of Justice. It was a miracle, and I could go into that ad nauseum. But when my university, American University, started getting hit broadside by the bad guys, they all but threw me out the door and threw the Xerox machine after me. So, no, you're not going to get grants. You're not going to do research. You're not going to be able to absolutely in any way succeed in your field if you're looking out for children, if you really are planning to tell the truth. I go to these conferences. I just went to a trafficking conference, White House trafficking conference. Oh, everybody's weeping crocodile tears about the children being kidnapped and trafficked and all that sort of thing. Oh, my goodness gracious me. All these big, important people. And so I say, in the middle of the trafficking conference, excuse me, but where's the great big, elephant that's clumping around the room? I've heard nobody say a single word about the role of pornography in creating child sexual abuse in mass. And you guys are ignoring that totally, aren't you? And yet we had 2,400 Pentagon staff and officials downloading child pornography. Hello? Does that suggest to you that we have a problem at the highest levels that is going to reflect itself in child sexual abuse and child trafficking? No, not at all. And it isn't just Obama, although certainly Obama has been just a disaster for America and for American children with the people that he's put in place. It is not just Obama, but it was everybody. I did my research under Ronald Reagan, and Reagan had people in the doorways or in the, hiding out who were there to kill any kind of real success in looking after our kids and in looking after our society. So, you got to be really aware and really active. But, we've got the bread and circuses thing going like crazy. People are buying stuff. People are pretending that, that they're involved and they're not. The Tea Party had a great possibility there. And I urge people to become part of the solution. Otherwise, I hope you don't believe in God, because if you do, when you get there, you're in a lot of trouble. We're supposed to be looking to the point where, well done, my good and faithful servant, is what you're going to hear when you're dead. And quite frankly, we're given great opportunities in this country. We've been given a great land, great nation, and we've allowed it to be driven into the hands of barbarians. And the barbarians aren't at the door; they're running the place.
Yes. Dr. Reisler, are you, do you have to get going here then, or do you have time for one more question, or?
Okay, one more question. How can I say no? You guys are so up on the
All right. All right.
But by the way, I am at Liberty University School of Law, so y'all have to support Liberty University School of Law. They have recently put out my last book, so the Liberty Council has. So, do get the books, become knowledgeable, become part of the solution, or you have yourselves to face, and I wouldn't want to be you.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, Doctor, you are the second PhD and the third professor that is admitted to me on my show that any academia that doesn't go along with the agenda does not get the grant money. So,
yeah, sure.
I think,
absolutely. So look to the scientific research. Yeah, I mean, come on, a scientist. Every once in a while, somebody squeaks through. We've had a few. Whether usually they've gotten private money to be able to do their research.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you did.
Okay, Steve, Renee, Rena, it's been great. Thanks. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reisman.
Thank you. Get on to my website. Give people my website.
Yes. Go ahead, Rena. Did you want to say something last?
Rena?
Oh, yes, Dr. Reisler.
Go ahead.
That's it, I guess.
She's getting ready to leave, Dr. Rena. Go ahead.
The connection's getting really bad here, you guys. I think there's a storm coming. I just wanted to say it was an honor to speak to you, Dr. Reisman. You're just a hero of mine, and, we support you. We support your book and the website that carries you, and we love you, and thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Thank you, Rena, and it's a delight to talk to Americans, real Americans, from the old days. Take care, and give them my website, Steve. All right?
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye, dear.
I will. You want to stay on, Rena, and talk about some more?
My signal is cutting in and out really bad right now. I don't understand what's going on. My extender's flashing all different kinds of colors, so I better just let you go. I think we're about to have a thunderburst here or something. As you can hear, my dogs are flipping out. So thank you so much, Stephen. I will, try to call you back if I get to resolve in the next 10 minutes. But thank you so much for the opportunity to get to ask her some questions and, for bringing this to light for people to see it, because we have to face this darkness if we want the suffering to stop. And that's all I have to say about that. Okay.
I'll be on for another hour and 10 minutes or hour and 20 or hour and 30 or I'm not sure how long. I might, I might be on till I don't know when. So if you want to call back, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, sir. We'll do.
All right. Good night. Hello, Rick. Are you there?
Yeah, I've been here. I'm trying to pick up my jaw off the floor here.
Yeah. You still have your feet on there? I'm getting a little bit of a echo in the background.
No, I got you muted, but I'll kill it here all the way. Is that better?
Sure. Well, no, I guess it doesn't matter because I'm still hearing it, but I'll deal with it. Yeah, a lot of great information. I've actually only gotten through about halfway through her book, and it's just stunning. I would suggest if anybody can go out and get Sexual Sabotage. That's her last book. I think she wrote in 2002, but it's been reprinted like 4 times now. So you can go get a signed copy at World News Daily. Which one is it? The one with Joseph Farah?
I think it's WorldNet.
WorldNet Daily, yeah. Yeah, you can get a signed copy of her book from there. I guess I could see in the MSI chat if anybody has messaged me.
Stephen, if had I had an opportunity to ask a question there, I might have asked a question like this. Let's talk a little bit about what the solution would be.
Yes.
How do you start this? It seems like you'd have to tackle it from from the local level and go up, because how many organizations have tried to remove the top layer? That's difficult to do.
Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to bring April up. I guess she wanted to come on for a little bit. She wanted to come on earlier and ask a question. Hi, April. Are you there?
Hey, hi. I ended up, how do I do this? Because I ended up having to put Glenn on hold by answering your call. Can I call you back and add you in? Can I do that?
I'm not sure.
All right, let me try.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely. Okay.
Have her call your number, Steve. That worked pretty well.
Yeah. I should be able to add her to the call if she calls back. I think she's probably just going to be able to drag me in and then get added to the call. And I think there'll be 4 of us on here. You're still on your show for another 10 minutes, though, aren't you, Rick?
Yes, I am. But that's okay. Fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, the information just comes fast and furious through that 42 minutes there. It was quite hard to get a question in there with Rena at the range.
Yeah, I didn't even try.
A young woman is quick on the tongue. She's quick getting her questions out and her statements too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little bit older and a little bit slower, I think. But I've gotten through a lot of her book, and Miss Kinsey is just I don't know what the problem was. Here we go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for that. We'll definitely do some editing on this recording. Sorry about that hold music there. We just are having a lot of problems trying to get Skype figured out and how to get secondary people in and to bring in groups of callers into into this show. And it didn't really work out very well. So we're just going to take the last 5 minutes here, and we're going to discuss what we just heard. It seems to me that we didn't really talk a lot about solutions on that call, and that's kind of the agenda of this particular show, is talking about solutions and how it is that we can change things or make things better, how we can be the change ourselves. And I think the bottom line is we're going to have to work at a sub-community level. We're going to have to engage with the people of our inner circle, and we're just going to have to make sure that the people that we hang out with are good, quality people, have accountability set up between people in our inner circle. We've really gotten away from having accountability partners in this country. I think there once was a day when people knew the ins and outs of what was going on in the house down the road from them. But something changed along the way, and I'm not sure what it was, outside of just God being pushed out of the way. So I want to I want to call forth to anyone who's listening to just start getting to know your neighbor. Start getting to know the person across the street from you. We can do this one person at a time, and it wouldn't take very long, because if we could get each person to go in and get to know their neighbors a little bit better, it would just take one generation, and we could have this all fixed. It's just a matter of giving people the opportunities to experience the same love that we experience. and I say that as a believer, me personally as a Christian. it's my obligation to share the passion and the love that I have with other people. And I find that when I do that, it transfers very well. It rubs off on other people. And I think that that's the kind of change that we need. We're just going to need to create a domino effect kind of deal where we go and begin to network and bring into close relationship our neighbor, and then our neighbor goes and finds a neighbor, and so on and so forth, until we've just collectively become one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's just exactly what the vision for this country was to begin with. Of course, this isn't really just an American issue. I know that the discussion that you just heard with Dr. Judith Reisler, I think was her last name, the discussion you just heard made it seem like it was an American problem, but really it is a worldwide problem. In fact, there's been studies done that show that in the Arabic nations, there's great atrocities in the family there too. There's a lot of stuff going on. The Jewish nation is no better. Europe has got a problem. It's just worldwide. It's just a condition of the heart. It's a condition of people, and we have the ability to make it better if we just put our minds to it. But we have to start with the guy next door. We can't go to the top. Removing the president, removing the Congress, removing the Justice Department, removing the judicial branch, all those kind of things, you're not going to get that done. It's going to be perceived as an act of war. We're going to have to work with those people. We're going to have to help to recondition those people. There's going to have to be a time of reconciliation. So I've really kind of just spoke my piece there, and we're down inside of 10 seconds left to go on the program. So I just want to thank each and every listener for coming on the program today. This has been another episode of the House of Hidalgo show on the Estate Radio Network, and we thank you all for being here. God bless, and please stay safe. Good night, all.